Early voting is already underway for the 2014 Texas primaries. Held March 4th, the official voting day, the state is preparing for what will be the first test of the controversial voter ID law. The Republican primary for lieutenant governor is the most watched race in Texas. 3 candidates are trying to unseat current Lieutenant Governor David Dewhurst. Primary elections will also be held for the Texas governor and U.S. senator positions, so a lot going on. A lot of important races. So this morning we're joined by political consultant Dallas Jones with more information on what we need to know as we head to the polls ahead of the Texas primaries. Let's begin first with Republican, Democrat. Do you have to be registered with a party to vote in the primary? How does that work here in Texas?
Absolutely not. The primaries are the party's opportunity to nominate the candidate of their choice. And so we have what's called an open primary here in Texas. That means that you can vote in either the Republican or Democrat primary, not both, but you can vote in either one or the other, and that will allow you to cast a ballot to vote for the party's nominee for each position on the ballot. How
are these votes counted in terms of, 50% gets you what?
Each candidate has to get 50% plus one, a majority. After that happens, then that candidate becomes the nominee of the party for the November general election. Now, if you don't do that, then there will be a runoff. If you get 45% or even 47% won't cut it. If one candidate does not get that 51%, then there'll be a runoff on May 27th, and they'll have to run in that election as well.
All right, so now that we have all of that laid out, let's talk about voter ID. What kind of ID are they looking for when you go to the polls at this point?
At this point, they're looking for a picture ID. So you're looking for any type of driver's license, U.S. passport, government ID card. You can also apply for a state-issued election ID, which will allow you to be identified that way, concealed handgun license, anything issued that has your picture as well as valid information about it.
Dallas, you go to the polls, you run into a problem. What should you do?
If you run into an issue or your ID for some reason is not valid enough or expired or whatever the case may be, you can cast what's called a provisional ballot. That's a ballot that you're allowed to cast by state law, and you have within 6 days to correct the problem with the county official in order to make sure that your ballot counts.
A lot of people feel like a provisional ballot is not a real vote, not a real casting of their ballot, but it's just provisional, as it's called specifically.
Absolutely. It's a provisional ballot. The obligation is on you to make sure that you correct whatever the issue was that made you have to cast a provisional ballot to start.
As people that watch politics, are you anticipating any big issues or issues in specific areas with this voter ID law?
Well, absolutely. I think there were concerns, all around the state when the law was originally passed. There'll be some issues for older voters that have a tradition of voting often and not having to provide anything more than their voter identification card. And there'll be some issues in certain communities. Hopefully the county clerk and secretary of state has done enough to educate people around these issues.
You mentioned briefly the election certificate. Do we have any idea really of how long it takes to get one of those?
Are you talking about the...
Right, in terms of like what you can use for the voter ID?
Okay. It probably takes about the standard time that it takes you to get a driver's license.
Sure.
So you're looking at about 2 to 3 weeks.
All right. So just watch out for that and go ahead and cast that provisional ballot. I think that's important for people.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for coming in for continuing coverage of the 2014 Texas primaries. Stay with Eyewitness News. We're going to have updates on the air, online, and of course through our news app. We will be right back.